Star by Ms. by Q. My God. Spectrophobia by Ms. This is Star by Q. I can't believe you got the internship, Sam said darkly. Me neither, but maybe you can get it next semester, Justin replied, hopeful. Hold on one second. That's a little too much. A little too much there. A little over the top with that. Okay. Sam and Justin were in the back, ignoring the syllabus introduction speech, as they did with most of the classes they shared that semester. Forgive me, I need to. You know, if you want to get your foot in the door, you should talk to Professor Candido, Justin whispered, as the professor paused to take questions. I had him last semester, and he knows the head of the IT department. I am not going to be teacher's pet for this internship, dude, Sam hissed back. The professor shot a look towards the back of the room, eyeing the two of them, and Justin engrossed himself in highlighting a page. The professor returned to his droning explanation. That's not what I meant, he whispered again. I hear he's overseeing the Neuralink study and could use some help with the paperwork. Doing unpaid labor so I could do more unpaid labor. Genius, Sam said. Just think it over, okay? I will, he sighed. He really did appreciate Justin looking out for him, as cantankerous as he could be. Sometimes he felt like he didn't deserve his friendship. Justin smiled and nodded before packing up and leaving the room. Database Systems 1 had wrapped for the day. Sam approached Professor Candido, but not before glancing to ensure the classroom was vacant. Professor Candido, he began. Sam, was it? Sam, was it? Professor Candido responded, looking up from his computer. Sam could swear he could see irritation in his face. He could probably recognize his voice from when they were talking over him in class. Yeah, I had a question for you. He paused nervously. Yeah? The professor said impatiently. Well, I was talking to Justin. He said he took a class with you last semester. Anyways, he said that you know the head of the IT department. More important to discuss than the syllabus, was it? He sighed. I do know Dan quite well. Justin said you could use some help with some paperwork. I was wondering if I could, if I helped out, maybe you put in a good word for me? I think that could be arranged. I have some files I was going to go over this lunch break. Would you be willing to do it today? I have a break between classes now, so I'm game, Sam said confidently. Great, Professor Candido said as he stood. You can work at my desk and review the potential participant screening surveys. Let's head over to my office. Sam waited at the door for the professor to pack up his computer and materials. So this is for Neuralink, right? The Elon Musk thing? Sam tried to fill the silence. Yes, it's founded in part by Elon Musk, he said, heading for the exit. So what is it exactly? Sam asked as he walked in stride. It's a neurological implant designed to allow people to control technology with their minds. And why is the computer science department overseeing this? Shouldn't this be a clinical study? It's a joint department oversight at the request of Musk himself, Professor Candido replied curtly. The study brings in a lot of funding for the university, so we oblige his requests. Oh, all right. Well, what am I looking for in the screening surveys? It's fairly simple. You're separating them into two piles, those who are eligible and those who are not. We're looking for men between the ages of 18 and 40, non-married, non-parental, that have no neurological issues in their medical history. Why unmarried and no fathers? I'll explain that once we're in private, the professor said. He slowed his pace and led them towards a building labeled Russell Hall. Sam quietly followed Professor Candido through the monotonous halls of the building until they came upon an office embossed with his name. "We're looking for single men without children," he said, shutting the door behind him, "because we're trying to mitigate the lawsuits if something goes wrong." "Oh," Sam replied awkwardly. "I guess that makes sense." The professor unlocked a filing cabinet behind his desk and produced a manila folder labeled Screening Surveys. He locked the drawer. "All right. Highlight any of the criteria that disqualify a candidate. Make the 2 piles. I'll be back in half an hour. That should be plenty of time." He motioned to the chair at his desk. "All right. See you after your lunch," Sam said, and eased himself into the seat. Professor Candido left, shutting the door behind him again, leaving Sam to the work ahead. Sam pulled a highlighter from his bag and opened the folder. There was a stack of about 30 surveys, each with a picture clipped to the front. Sam carefully read through each survey, occasionally highlighting red flags like concussion. It was almost too straightforward. Information about immediate family and marital status were on the first page, and neurological medical history was compiled into its own section. You choose to reproduce, so no study for you." Sam put a survey in the rejected pile and reached for another. He looked over to see that this was not a survey, but a document with a Neuralink printed at the top and a diagram of the insertion of the chip. According to the clock, only 10 minutes had passed. There was time to read this in between surveys. His eyes scanned over the page, met by large blocks of blacked out text. Upon flipping it over, hardly anything was left untouched there either. He set it down and reached for the next page in the folder. This one said Starlink in the header and was also heavily censored. Sam looked over his shoulder at the door and again at the clock. He put the non-survey sheets back in the folder and closed it, resuming checking over surveys. Once he finished, he noticed sticky notes on the desk and placed one in each pile, drawing a check mark on one and an X on the other. Sam eyed the folder again and jumped when the door opened. "Did you manage to sort through them all?" Professor Candido asked casually. "Yeah, no problem," Sam nodded. He stood up and grabbed his backpack. "Great, I'll give it a look, and if everything checks out, I'll talk to Dan about that internship." "Awesome. Thanks so much." Sam stumbled towards the door. "You might want to tie your shoes, Sam," the professor said. Sam blinked and retied his shoes. He walked out of the office and passed a flyer for the Neuralink study on the hallway bulletin board. He couldn't help smiling. It was nearly a week later that Sam saw an email in his student inbox. From Daniel Pilot to Samuel Little. Subject: Internship. Hi, Sam. I spoke to Dr. Candido about your interest in the campus IT internship. He spoke highly of your willingness to seek out opportunity and good work ethic. You'd be a star addition to our team when there's an opening next semester. I can get the ball rolling on the process this week. If you're still interested, please respond to this email to let me know. Regards, Dan Pilot, IT Director. Sam was walking out of the science hall after a biology class when he spotted Justin marching through the building and rushed to tap him on the shoulder. Justin jumped, practically tripping, before smiling back nervously. "Hey, man," Sam started. "What are you doing here? Thought you finished your gen eds." "I'm just here to talk to a pre-med student about something," Justin said, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "About what? Don't tell me you're going to switch your major in your junior year." "I'm lending some assistance for the study," he stammered. "I really need to get there, too, so I'll see you later." He rushed away. "Oh, see you later," Sam said, mostly to himself. He was disappointed in the brevity of the conversation. He'd been wanting to discuss those strange documents he found reviewing surveys. Hopefully, he'd get his chance whenever they went out for drinks. Once Dan, the head of the IT department, had received confirmation from the University of Sam's enrollment, he invited Sam to come down to the office. Excitedly, Sam walked to the Cartman Library. Cartman Library, is it? Oh, Carmen Library. My fault. He didn't only want to meet Dan, but also to catch up with Justin. He really wished they'd been assigned to the same dorm again. Clipped text messages and waving at each other in class were not enough. It didn't help that it seemed like Justin was avoiding him since meeting in the science building. He looked for the lower level door around the back that Dan had mentioned. There was an unmarked door with a rusting handle. He hesitantly turned it, fearing it would fall off, but it was perfectly stable. He stepped in and looked around. Years ago, it had been part of the library, even had the same carpet as upstairs, although faded and noticeably fraying. There were several study tables in the wide open area, and behind them were a variety of tech from different eras. CRT monitors, dot matrix printers, even large speakers used for events, stacked against the walls. Whether this was akin to a museum display or a landfill, he wasn't so sure. "Is the printer not working?" asked a voice from behind him. "Oh, no," Sam said as he turned around. "I'm here to see Dan." Dan didn't mention anyone coming to see him," the owner of the voice said, crossing his arms and taking a step towards him. He was a bulky guy with wariness in his eyes. Sam anxiously took a few steps back, unsteady, as he stepped on one of his laces. He stammered as the man took another step towards him. Sam saw Justin over the man's shoulder and shot him a look. "Hey, Connor, that's Sam. It's okay," Justin said, dashing over to place a hand on the man's shoulder. "He's going to be an intern next semester." Connor's shoulders relaxed, and he uncrossed his arms. "That's all you needed to say, kid," he laughed. "Dan's out of town for a while. He'll be back by next semester." "Oh, I see," Sam sighed, shoulders drooping. A low sound started, one Sam wasn't really sure he was hearing. "By the way, sounds like the server needs maintenance," Connor said to Justin, who was looking through the drawers. Justin looked up, expression dark, as the bulky man tossed a keyring to him. Justin carefully picked out a key with a red marker on it and shuffled around the corner. "Our star server is something of a diva," Connor smiled. "That's the worst job here by far. You'll find out soon enough." "Right," said Sam absently. "This place sure is big." "That it is." "Hey, would I be able to come down here to study?" "Well," Connor said, thinking it over. "The private rooms in the library are usually taken around exams," Sam added. "I can hook you up." Connor looked at Sam once over, and something flashed across his eyes. "But you have to promise not to bring anyone else here. And you can't touch anything," he added conspiratorially. "Yeah, of course. Wouldn't dream of it." "Okay. I'll give you my number, and you text me in advance when you want to come down here. Dan doesn't know, but I made copies of the keys so I can come down here whenever I want." Connor winked. "Awesome, thanks. You think Justin will be back soon?" "He's going to be occupied for a while." "Okay. Can you tell him to text me?" "Sure thing." Sam waited until midterms to call in his favor from Connor. "Hey, Connor, I was wondering if I could study in the basement Monday," he sent. "Hey, Star, of course," Connor texted back. "Great. When can I go down there?" "You'll have to wait until IT is done for the day, at 5. "Perfect. I'm more of a night owl anyways." "Not too late, though. You'll have to be out by midnight." "That's totally fine. Would 7 p.m. work Monday night?" "Sure, I'll have the door unlocked for you. Just text me when you're done." Sam made his way to the library Monday night, and the door was open as promised. He set down his textbooks, highlighters, colorful pens, and a stack of loose-leaf paper, and began rewriting his notes in a more concise way for the topics of the upcoming tests. While he was thankful for Connor allowing him to come down here, he couldn't help feeling a little uneasy in this wide-open, forgotten basement. Sam was caught up in flagging things in his notes. He wanted to re-summarize when he heard what he thought was a sound. It ceased after a few minutes. He had rewritten a few pages when he swore he heard it again, but again it faded. Maybe he'd had too many energy drinks today, though he never remembered them causing him to hear things. At least an hour and several more pages of notes had passed. The sound was there again. Sam tried to ignore it, but it was getting louder now. He could only describe it as a wailing. When he'd reached his limit, he put aside his work, followed the sound, and ended up turning the corner and going down the hall. There were several doors down here, close together. He couldn't tell which one was coming from. He felt like he was coming close to touching something. He didn't want to upset Connor. He retreated to the table he'd set up on and packed up, and texted Connor that he was done. "Hey, midterms are over. Time to celebrate," Sam texted. "I don't know, man. I kind of just want to sleep," Justin replied. "Sleep when you're dead, like they say. Come on, I barely talked to you this whole term." "Not all of us are creatures of the night, Sam." "You can be for one night. Come on, I'll buy." "I guess I could have a few drinks tonight." Justin met Sam at the hipster coffee pub that they liked, where Sam was sipping on some craft beer that cost too much. "Hey man, what's up?" Sam asked. "Oh, you know, been busy with stuff," Justin sighed, sitting on the stool next to Sam. Sam asked the bartender for a couple of shots for the two of them, both of which Justin drank. He was putting them down like he'd just been stranded in the desert for a week. He was about 5 shots in when Sam said something. "Hey, are you okay?" Sam said, still sipping on his beer. "Yep, just want to kill some brain cells," Justin said and motioned for his 6th. Sam shot the bartender a look and made a cutthroat motion the next time she came over. She nodded and went back to cleaning glasses. "Why do you want to turn your brain off?" Sam asked, turning to face his friend. "I don't want to talk about it," Justin slurred. "Okay," Sam replied. "Can I ask you some questions?" "I guess." "So why were you helping with the study?" "Can't answer that," he said, his tone clipped. "When I did that favor for Professor Candido, I found some weird papers." "Oh?" Justin said disinterestedly. "Yeah, blueprints or something, but they were redacted. Do you know anything about that?" "Can't tell you." Sam was getting frustrated. "Okay, what do you know about Starlink?" "It's a satellite internet program by Elon Musk." Justin avoided eye contact. "Well, yeah, but do you know anything else?" "Nope." "Well, then why have you been avoiding me?" "I haven't been avoiding you." Justin looked at him as if taken aback. "I've just been occupied." "With what?" "Stuff." Sam took his last sip of beer and motioned for the bartender, ordered 2 more shots. Justin happily downed his. "Tell me about working in IT," Sam coaxed him. Justin shook his head. Sam ordered 2 more shots. They drank them. "Justin, please," Sam begged. "Please, tell me about it." "Look, man, just drop the internship," Justin finally sighed. "What do you mean?" "I mean, forget it. Maybe even transfer school," he hiccuped. "Just get out of it, trust me." "What are you, crossfaded? Is that why you're acting so weird?" Sam asked. Justin just laughed. He got up and stumbled to the bathroom. Sam found the bartender, paid the hefty tab they'd racked up tonight. After about 10 minutes, Sam went to check up on Justin. He was on his knees in one of the stalls, head resting on the seat. "Hey, man, are you okay?" Sam asked. Justin didn't reply, just groaned and vomited in the bowl. Sam awkwardly stood back, watching. "We'll get you back to your dorm. You think you can make it until then?" Justin nodded. They made an unsteady trek back to campus. A week after the night out with Justin, Sam received a text from Connor. "Hey, Star, come hang out with someone other than just that lightweight." "I might come. Are you inviting the lightweight?" Sam texted back. "I texted Justin, but he said he wasn't feeling up to it. That's okay, we'll have a rager without him." "Name the time and place." 3 hours in the basement." "All right, see you there." "Great, and you can't tell anyone about it." My lips are sealed. Maybe he did need to make some new friends, since Justin scarcely wanted anything to do with him. After all, he hadn't met Connor's friends, mostly other computer science majors, and even a few that had already done the internship. He bought the cheapest 24-pack of beer and walked over to the library. He could hear the music outside the door. Walking into the basement, he saw about 10 people at various stages of inebriation. Connor had a beer in hand, smiled wide when he saw Sam. "You made it," he yelled over the music. "Yeah, couldn't miss it," Sam said as he set the case on the table. Connor made no attempt to introduce Sam to anyone at the party, and instead tapped away at his phone, the song changing. Sam noticed it was the event speakers thumping with the music. Sam awkwardly tried to talk to some people, but most of them were talking amongst themselves. Sam downed a few beers before resigning himself to scrolling on his phone in the corner. He was brought to full awareness, however, when a short silence arrived between songs. It wasn't silent. He couldn't place it at first, but slowly came to an unmistakable realization. It was the exact same wailing he had heard before. He cast an uneasy look towards the other guests, but to his surprise, nobody else seemed to notice it. Sam's eye caught the key ring on the help desk, unattended. Upon scanning the room, Connor was at a table with the majority of his friends, pouring shots of vodka. The other two people were in conversation in the opposite corner. Sam casually walked over to the desk and grabbed the keys, hiding them in his hand. He slipped around the corner to the hallway, where he'd heard the sound before. The music became quieter as he padded down the hall, bringing the eerie sound to the front of his mind. He walked slowly. He carefully pressed his ear to the first door. Silence. He repeated this process with each door following, only pausing to glance behind himself in the hall. It had to have been at least 5 doors before he reached the end, the one labeled server room. The wailing was distinctly behind this door. Sam shakily searched for the red key and put it in the door and turned it. He slowly, still shaking, pulled it open. The wailing immediately amplified. Little LED stars blinked in the artificial night of the server's room. Rubbing his eyes, he cautiously stepped into the dark closet. When his eyes adjusted, he gasped at the sight of a pale man strapped into a chair. There were tubes running from him into the machines that quietly whirred and beeped. He could tell that one was a feeding tube. Another appeared to have blood coursing through it. He stood very still. He didn't know how long, just staring blankly at this man. Connor's whisper broke his state of stunned silence. "Hey, Star. What the hell is going on here? Did you know about this?" Sam asked desperately. He backed himself towards the man, now one step deeper into the closet. "This is our server, courtesy of the Neuralink study. We were going to wait to introduce you until you started your internship." "So you're using his brain?" "Yeah, it's revolutionary. This will change the world. It's cheaper than conventional, requires less non-renewable resources. It's more powerful than if this closet was stacked up to the walls with servers. This is the future of Starlink, the future of tech. This is how we're going to solve overpopulation and climate change simultaneously. What the hell are you talking about? How can you do this to a human being? Sam, there are plenty of invalids, homeless, unwanted children. We're doing the world a favor. How do you know he was one of those people? Even if he was, who cares? Sam looked over at the server. We can just let him go, he pleaded. Just let him go. I won't tell anyone. Even if that were something I was willing to do, he wouldn't survive. Look at him. He's not all there anymore. He is completely dependent on those machines to live. This is the future, Sam. You're going to become a part of history with us. I'm not a part of this. I'm not going to join you, Sam said, raising his voice. You're already a part of this. You may as well have hooked him up to those machines yourself when you approved his survey. Sam's face went pale. Of course. He'd seen his picture when he'd been sorting through the screenings. I didn't know. I didn't. Sam was starting to hyperventilate. Come on, Sam. Come back to the party. You don't have to think about it now. Connor reached out his hand and stepped towards him. Sam shuffled backwards. The server gasped, and Sam looked towards it. He stepped on one of his untied laces and fell backwards with a crash. What did you just do? Connor yelled. Sam was dazed on the floor, tangled in tubing. His jeans were damp, and he saw crimson pooling near his feet. The machines behind him droned interminably, some kind of warning sounds. The server ceased its groaning. One of the partygoers appeared behind Connor's shoulder. Did he just kill the server? He asked. Connor didn't say anything at first. He just walked into the closet and peeled the server from the chair. He took a long needle out of the server's arm and knelt with his knee on Sam's back. What are you doing? Sam yelled, kicking his legs. I told you, Sam. You're going to be our star. Just sooner than I thought. Connor looked over his shoulder at the partygoers. Go get the ice pick. The end. I wish I could have played ominous music there at the end. That was right out of Twilight Zone. That was wonderful.